Good afternoon, and today I am talking about effective lesson planning. The first very important is taking notebook like a pencil and etc. because it's very important to take this practice and more practice for the English and vocabulary. So for the first, we have the obviously what is the effective lesson planning. Well, the first in this draft is the interrogative person. Maybe have an idea, maybe planning any something or have different situations we have no idea. So it is an essential process for educators, the meaning students or the workers every time. And since it arrows the content, objectives, and learning objectives or activities through the structure, be like for the man and the woman in base for the organized way, but in different situations we have training any area for a well training and lesson not only improves the teaching but also optimize the students we have experiences. The experience is the most important because it has accuracy and is more easy and simple for use. This have any interrogative in the have the topic or have the, any instruction or rules or it depends on the level. So which are teacher designs a sequences of activities in order to achieve a specific learning objective. So it's the most used in the objectives for the first introduction, for first the objectives, and maybe the finally the conclusion. We have the any answers and have any experiences for have used for the taken for all the experiences. We have an idea maybe for element keys. For these key elements, we have an effective lesson. We have the objective, obviously the most be clear because it's important taking a tree for the other students. We have the follow the rule and the follow the instruction for the teacher or for the other student. We have the idea for the specific admissible. For example, the student will be able to identify the causes for the French Revolution. What is this example? So this example, the student is identify the reasons, the cause for this revolution France for the all the years we have when I is not I exist in this today. So it's really curiously and interesting for investigate what is happening in this French Revolution. So the students will have any interesting for investigate for this topic for this history will happen in the maybe for example 2020 or on 1931 maybe for example obviously it's not a trip my the year, but it's only hypothesis. So previously noted it had activity where students already know the content with the new content. The new content is we have the introduction, we have the activity to capture the students interesting, for example the questions, the videos, and maybe the role play. Maybe the role play is the most useful for practice for the other students. We have interesting or attention for the student. We have talking about an interaction for different ideas or talking about the what is to do today, how are you today. So it's the most simple we have in base for the development, the use of visual and the technology and the manipulate resource for these elements, for example, the battery, for example, the lights, for example, every different ideas for use for the resource. So we have limited for use this resource for interact for the other students for this effective lesson. So the guide and autonomous practice is more simple because the guide is for the teacher and sometimes the students or on self or individual. So the students apply what they have learned with the support of the teacher, the guide. The meaning guide is the result of practice like the teacher and practice in base for the information, maybe the book, maybe in the computer book, or independently autonomous. And the assessment we have the two, formative and summative. So the first formative is the continued evaluations during the lesson, questions and the short exercise. In the class, in the classroom is the typical happen when the student or the teacher is taking evaluation, maybe for example a test or maybe for example any homework or classwork because in the during the lesson is more useful and useful for you practice you short exercise and slow you can do it and more easy for you adapt these ideas in these papers in the book and information, and finally you have idea what happened in this topic, and the summative at the end of the lesson they measure achievement for objectives. So we have maybe comprehension and the lesson for measure achievement objectives. So maybe in the end of the lesson is maybe a good positive or negative positive, but it depends for the students we have the idea and have understanding about the topic or understanding like the teacher, because it's really when the throw summary of key points and final reflection. So when they finish the class, so is have any reflection or have any point about the point of view, maybe any opinion, maybe for example happen when you see YouTube videos and maybe you commentary any positive or negative opinion, but it depends for the people we have the idea or maybe point of view, but depends for the respect, or maybe sometimes it's not good, or maybe sometimes it's a bad or worse happening in the world or happen in the class. Maybe the student will have a good idea and good experiences in the teacher, or maybe have neutral experiences with the teacher. Now the process is for planning and this lesson. We have these six, or maybe had two more. I don't know, but but the first, define the objectives. What should the students learn? Well, what should the students learn is when we have the information and have the experiences like the teacher. So define this objective. We have the first, maybe clearly the topic, maybe the most simple objective we have before we planning and working in this objective. So the two we have selected relevant content. The content is the most relevant for this information. Maybe meaning for aligning with the curriculum when you progress and maybe longer time or time to time for the past of the years we have experiences and you have and reform the curriculum for improve for more experiences like you adaptation for your classroom or maybe adaptation you working in the study. So we have the design motivating activities adapted to the needs for the students. Adapt is the most important for adapt because sometimes it's mainly sometimes not good comfortably for needs of the students, but in the time we had a cost rated for these needy students, like a group of working in groups. So we had incorporated resources and materials. We had obviously technology, text, image, or cell phones, everything, etc. So we had a print time. Sometimes the time is the most double fry because the time maybe for example we have 2 hours in the class, but it depends we have when the time is useful for the stimulated duration of each for this activity. So many sometimes it's very good to have taken the activity maybe 30 minutes or maybe 1 hour, but depends the teacher we had explain about the topic and explain any more information in based in your experiences we have for this preparation strategies to check understanding. It's important we have the teacher see the study, we have any doubts and any confusions about this topic because sometimes the topic is most proof and most hard because the information is really too tough and it's more principally the teacher is see the students will have the check of cutter and the understanding about this effective learning. So we have the tips for effective planning. Bit of recipe planning is a key, but not a rigid rule. The rule is maybe typically is not a good, but sometimes get to know your students. We have the adaptive activities according to their level and interesting. Sometimes the level in the students is not a good, or maybe it's the best good. The student maybe is a most intelligent, or but the other student will have not enough level for this topic. So it depends the teacher taking these levels for the other students and equilibrium for these students because you can make working in two students and maybe these two students will have interest in about this activity. We had introduced different methodologies. We had activity learning, incorporated and magnification. The methodology is the most improvely understanding about the word and the new word and the vocabulary. So the student will have entirely different methodologies or maybe the pronunciation. We had a reference use after class, evaluate what worked and what can be improved. And includes diversity. Consider various learning styles. The diversity is the most good for the student who have different ideas or own ideas for planning in these activities according to their level. And in progress development for this interesting methodology and the learning in the group or individual, but depends in the planning you have for these tips. For these tips, we have a plan I calling daily routine. So the first typical lesson theories, maybe daily routines talking about your day, maybe it's a good, maybe your habits or hobbies, everything. And the grade level is simple, A1 and A2 level, or and the signature, in my case, idioms, all English. And the three duration, but it depends. The duration you can't 1 hour, but sometimes is minimum taking 45 minutes. It's maybe a good time, but depends the level for the student and for the 70 lesson planning for the other students. So we had the learning objectives. We have this for part we had identified for these commonly verbs related to daily routines. For example, present simple or every time's presence. We had example wake up, brush, eat, go, study. It's a verb. Sometimes the verb is the most useful for taking and putting the sentences. Verb depends because sometimes the students will have taken invention and taking it have not make sense for connect the sentences. Maybe for example, football and eat. It's not necessarily taking combination because it not have make sense. So maybe it's a good decision we taking that makes sense, like comparison with the thing we have revelation or have similarity and the same word we have useful for taking for these sentences and created for these sentences based for past tense, present simple, present progressive, present perfect, and the future. So the student will construct simple present tense sentences to illustrate the daily routines and will ask unanswered questions about daily activities using what time do you and when do you. It's a question is a typical you had a yes or no. The question is the most good idea because you can take in a question and answer about your partner about is more good practice and taking more easily for memorization in the word and the vocabulary and we have for this material needed typical fractals, synonyms, antonyms, and the picture words, and everything we did word and makers different practice time, role play videos, or listen music in only English, but subtitle maybe English because sometimes the students have different confusion for the different letters. So it's maybe important maybe taking and putting the subtitles for what is the word correctly because sometimes it's the same word, but sometimes in the listening it's not the same. So it's very important taking note in your notebook. So we have this practice for don't more hard. We have the six lesson procedure. Wordman, 5 minutes activity, six minigame. The teacher makes daily activities, and the stage yes. Maybe for example, pretending the brush teeth, eating a breakfast. Well, present progressive. When you see breakfast, you know it's a immediately moment now. So for this the reason is the purpose when they use activity proof noted and engage the students. So what is the student? Well, the student is freak fast for working the group and working in the idea. In the presentation, we have 5 minutes. Introducing vocabulary with cards, wake up, take and well, etc., etc. And then we have a more simple phrase. I wake up and 7 a. I go to school and 8 a.m. This exercise is like an habit, or sometimes it's a half idea for the student, have the continue their life for this have the idea and the use about for this practice time for about you your holidays about you today yesterday and what did you do in the morning so and this focus on pronunciation sentences structure. Sometimes the practice will take minimum 50 minutes. but it's important take control in practice and matching verbs or pictures on a worksheet and pick activity and ask for the students the question with a partner. What time do you wake up? The other partner? Well, I wake up at 6 a.m. or sometimes it's different. When do you have a good morning? Well, it depends. It sometimes is quickly the question is maybe taken for 2 seconds or only 1 second for you contestation about this question. So the most is typical when used this practice is roleplay, short dialogues to practice friendly is the most useful for the practice in the roleplay. It's most easily, most fast, most break fast, and most make seniors at a most good time for this practice. So like maybe two partners is the maybe enough for you can practice, but it's not bad or worse. You can practice for more people because you can interact with a debate, and we have any assignments on base for observation to repair and group activities checking for correct use of vocabulary and sentence structures. It depends because the structure is the most can need a student and the use for the structure, but sometimes the structure is differently. The structure is maybe sometimes we have the listening and the presentation working for these forensic occurrences. We had the difference for advanced learners and the more complex time. We had different expressions, a different intonation, different vowels and consonants. So we have this happening when you for strongly learners for improve sentences and improve examples studies or work backs to support speaking activities or talking activities. And then finally, the homework. It's the typical the teacher use, but it's always the teacher use the homework. But depends. We have maybe the teacher have any don't have enough time. Maybe tomorrow I explain more this topic for you can understand it more clearly and more easily for the students. So the homework is the most typical use, but it's the most good idea because you can explain the student and the student can interested about working this in the house in the half an hour. Maybe for example, what is happening in the Revolution France? So the students investigate maybe in the book or only the computer. So it's more easily or well the most easily because sometimes the chat GPT is the most easily for the students have enough for maybe working a copy paste for only 10 seconds is a function, but sometimes the teacher is not a fool, so sometimes the teacher is see the writing and the speaking for the students. So many sometimes the technology is not a good idea, but sometimes the technology is a good resource. But it depends. Sometimes usually use the old school in the use the practice in the English and the language and the grammar for include at least 5 words from the lesson and includes for many more practice in oral lesson. So it's most effective for you can see the student is can a good level and working this level, or maybe the student is stank for no understandable clearly because useful only technology and not only study about the topic. And that's it. Thank you for your attention and for this my conclusion. So this effective lesson planning is the most important for the teacher because sometimes the teacher need many more practice because sometimes the teachers making mistakes maybe for the verbs, maybe the pronunciation, maybe the words, and many in the attention in the paragraph and sometimes in the exams. So it's important the teachers practice to more for this planning before taking the classroom and the class for the students for the practice about the topic